So we're continuing now with lesson 3 of the step-by-step tutorial, and we're discussing here how you can bind the UX component to a database so that the controls on the component can be displaying data from one or more of the tables in the database. We've just selected the customer table, and in some applications you might need to go and choose additional tables. So for example, let's just quickly talk about, say, maybe an invoicing type application where you might have one table called order header and then another table called order details with a one-to-many relationship between order header and order details, and you could model that by going ahead here and adding additional tables. But in this particular case we only need a single table, so let's go ahead now and click OK to close this dialog down. So now we've specified that the component is bound to the customer table, but we still haven't specified how the controls that we placed on this component are bound to fields in that customer table. So now let's click the button here that says Bind UX Component Controls to Table Fields, and this opens up another dialog that shows all of the controls on our component and lets us indicate how these controls are bound to fields in the table that this component is bound to. So we can go, for example, to the customer ID field, double click on it and specify that the customer ID control is bound to the customer ID field in the customer table. And we can go through this one by one, or we can click this automatically map fields, which automatically maps all of the controls on the UX component to a corresponding field in the customer table of the same name. So you can see now that we've automatically bound all of these controls to their corresponding control in the customer table. And then we still have this control here, list ID, list 1, which is the list that we created in lesson 1. And this is an unbound control. So let's go here and change that to be not updatable. So you can see by clicking on this toggle updatable on selected fields link over here, we're going to go and change the control here from updatable to non-updatable. So once you've got this dialog all filled in as shown here, then just click the OK button, and now you've then clicked the OK button again to close the Bind UX Controls to Table Fields dialog, which gets you back to the UX component here. And you can see now by looking at the summary section on the dialog here that we are now bound to a SQL database using this connection string Northwinds, and we're bound to the customers table in that database. So at this point now we've actually completed the task of binding the UX component to the customer table, but there's still more work to do. So if we go now to working preview, we can see that we're still not actually seeing any data from the customer table. So now the next thing that we need to do is specify that when this component is run, we want to go and load the primary keys for the record in the for all of the records in the customer table. So we're going to go back now to design mode and then go over to our server-side events. So if you look at the list of sections here, you can see in the events category there are server-side events and client-side events. So server-side events are the events that take place on the application server side, and client-side events are the events that take place in the browser. Those would be JavaScript events. So let's pause now and pick this up in the next video.